This week on RVER, sponsored by Progressive Insurance.
I'm sorry, I can't operate on that vehicle.
But doctor, you took an oath.
That RV, it's my son's RV.
Oh, doctor, isn't there anything you can
I'm
do?
not a miracle worker, Sheila. I'm an RV surgeon, trained to save the lives of large injured recreational vehicles, which is definitely a real profession.
When your RV really needs saving, Progressive has you covered. See if you could save with a leader in RV insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, covered subject to policy terms.
Black Friday deals, the gifts are unreal.
Shop JCPenney for thousands of deals so low, no coupons needed. This weekend, save up to 50% on kitchen electrics from brands like Keurig and Cuisinart. Say yes, please, to diamonds and gemstones, now $19.99 each. And bundle up the fam in coats, starting at $14.99. We got your holiday.
Black Friday deals. Shop, JCPenney.
Offers valid on select items 11/18 through 11/20. Excluded from coupons. Exclusions apply. See store or jcp.com for details.
Hello, all. Welcome to Meet the Press Slam here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. I am your host, Danny Kukler, and I have a very special guest with me, the curator of the Wrestling 101 over at voicesofwrestling.com, Kevin Hare. How are you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing all right, Danny. How about you?
I'm doing very well today. I've gotten the chance to read all 3 articles, and I'm very inspired by this project that you're doing, and very, very that I can't speak today with a very Philadelphia Eagles fan. So how you doing?
Doing well. Went to Full Gear last night. It was a fun show. So
yeah, it was a fun show. So I got the chance to watch that. It was a fun show. So getting ready to talk some wrestling today. So do you want to delve a little bit into your fandom before we talk Wrestling 101?
Sure. Perfect. So I became a wrestling fan, I guess, very early when I was younger. I didn't really know how to watch wrestling when I was young, like 4, 5, 6. I didn't really know, but I had a babysitter that would buy me a lot of wrestling stuff. So it's kind of ingrained early, even though I didn't really know what it was or how to watch it. And then so I still went through a lot of my like younger years without really watching it. It was kind of on the periphery. It was the early 90s, so it was like right after Hogan. So it was weird. I don't really remember too many of my friends really watching it or anything. I think it was kind of like right after it really permeated like culture like it did a few years before. But then during the Attitude Era, obviously it was everywhere. And then so I started to see Stone Cold shirts everywhere and NWO shirts everywhere. And that's when I started to start watching. And I mentioned in one of the articles that we did already for the Wrestling 101, but I went to a Blockbuster and I just decided I wanted to rent a wrestling tape, and I didn't really have any frame of reference of what to rent. And the King of the Ring 1998 tape just seemed interesting, but I didn't know anything about it.
Wow.
So I rented it, and then I had no idea what was on it. I just knew that Stone Cold was on it, and that, it seemed interesting. So I had no idea about the Hell in a Cell match. I knew nothing about it. And then I watched that, and I just I couldn't really understand what I was seeing. Like, it was so crazy that it was just like my brain couldn't process it. So from then I became pretty hooked. I was watching everything. I couldn't watch Raw live. My parents wouldn't let me, so I would just watch like all the weekend recap shows and Sunday Night Heat and all that type of stuff. And then through middle school, I was pretty obsessed with it. And then went to high school, 2001, right around the invasion, and I just kind of fell off for a few years in high school. I think that kind of like happened to a lot of people around that time period. And then late high school, when I remember when Randy Orton won the title, I started watching it again casually. And then once I went to college, which would have been like 2005, 2006, is when I kind of just started to really dive in more in a historical way, and like there's way more than just like what's on TV right now type of way. And so started to figure out, see old wrestling and figure all that. And then a few years after that, got really into Puro and the indies and all that type of stuff. and then just have been watching all sorts of different stuff since.
Yeah, we all have our ways of getting into wrestling, and you get your wrestling tapes and you see King of the Ring 1998, and you don't know the Hell in a Cell match is even on there. You just see Stone Cold Steve Austin, and
Yeah,
ain't
The
that
Undertaker and all that stuff.
Isn't that unbelievable that you didn't even know the lore of
Yeah, I had no
Undertaker
idea.
Mankind?
Yeah,
And
which is like cool as a kid. It's funny. It's fun to like just discover stuff where you just don't know. I feel like I'm hoping, to be honest, I kind of the point of this project and to kind of introduce it a little bit is just we Robin Reid and I from Voice of Wrestling one day earlier this year, we were just randomly talking of a bunch of people randomly talking, and someone in Voice of Wrestling in the network of people who work there just casually mentioned that they hadn't seen Bret Hart versus Owen Hart from WrestleMania 10, and
right.
For me, like it kind of brought up the idea where there's a group of there's just like a canon group of matches that I assume that everybody has seen. And I don't mean that in like you have to have seen this match type of way, but like I just figure that with the way that my wrestling fandom is that some people that people just act the same way, like treat things the same way that I do, where it's like, oh well, I want to find out about wrestling, so I just am diving in, and I know that there's these matches that like I have to find. And of course, it's a bit ignorant and insane to think everybody does things the same way as you, but still, on the other hand, it's just like, well, how could somebody not see this stuff? And that kind of put things in perspective of, well, actually, there's a really good chance that everybody has blind spots, and it just you might not you may not realize what their blind spots are. It might be hard to understand it, but they're still there. So that kind of made it kind of a light bulb went off as we were talking, because one of my arguing points was like just like, yeah, it's like this would be like in a wrestling 101, like this would be one of the first matches. And that kind of just like an offhand comment like that kind of sparked Robin, and he messaged me and was just like, hey, this is actually a good idea, let's do it. So we've been working on it from there. But my hope is that the same way that I didn't know what was going in to the Undertaker match, my hope is that somebody watches this and that they don't, they might not understand, might not know or have a frame of reference about some of the stuff that we're showing now, and then just be like, oh my God, this is awesome. And then just go from there and discover all sorts of stuff that maybe they didn't know or never seen, never heard of before.
Open rabbit holes that they never would have thought before. And that's what wrestling's all about, is opening the rabbit holes of different things. Because one of the things that discovered Puro for me was when Misawa died, honestly.
Right.
And
right.
I was like, who the hell is this Misawa guy who's everyone's saying is the best wrestler of all time, and I haven't heard of him?
Right. Yeah, I mean, actually, that for me, it was right around the same time as that too, where so I found out, like, I heard Misawa died, and then I was starting to discover some Ring of Honor stuff, and I saw the Kenta versus Loki match, and then right after that, found the Kenta and I'm gonna mess up who's in the match. Kenta and Go Shiozaki versus the Kensuke Sasaki and Nakajima match, which was the Misawa tribute match. And then I saw that, and then I go, oh, this is awesome. Then I find more Kenta stuff. I find the Kenta versus Nakajima stuff from around there. Then I also figure out, well, Kenta Kobashi was in Ring of Honor 2. Find Kenta Kobashi stuff. Find Kenta Kobashi and Noah stuff. Then go backwards, find Kenta Kobashi, or find the Misawa versus Kobashi match from Noah. Then go backwards, find the All Japan stuff. Then find Stan Hansen. Then find Holy Demon Army. Like, that's how you say the rabbit hole, like that's how, especially like my brain, that's how I find one thing that I like, and then I watch a little bit, and then from there, just all the roots kind of just extend, and you just keep going and find different things, and you never know what you're going to find. So that's why, like, you're exactly right. That's exactly the point of, we want to just give people just a little bit, like, this is the match, this is a big match, but we also try to give some other things like, hey, this is similar, maybe it's a similar style, maybe it's similar
Right.
guys, but just like to just kind of dive in and discover stuff, and that's really all that I'm hoping for with this, because as we already discussed, like that was what was really fun, and now there's so much wrestling you can find. It's almost like claustrophobic because there's so much out there that it's hard to even know where to start or how to find things. So everything is there, like easier than ever, at the tips of your fingers. But when I was getting into, especially like Puro, we can go back to that again. Like it was all through, like it was after the age of tape traders, but it was before. It was like torrents were a thing, of course, but like it was kind of before it was as big, and it was before a lot of the streaming stuff. So it was that in between of like Mega Upload and the Ditch website, and like the Puro threads on CZW fans, and Death Valley Driver, like recommendation threads and stuff. So it was easy to find out. It wasn't easy per se, but like you could kind of see, you could have a curated, like, hey, these are the things to check out. And now there's so much at all times that it's almost like harder for that, so in some ways. So the even though there's way more, it's easier than ever to find it. So just kind of give people a little bit of direction. There's no this is not the best 100 matches of all time. These aren't even necessarily like the best matches of the groupings. Like maybe people have better matches or whatever, but like we try to do a balance of things that are good, things that are iconic, things that you should just see, demonstrate a style, whatever. Just kind of, these are 101 matches that are in the lexicon of wrestling that we think you should see. And some are famous, some are not, but that's what we are hoping for. Make it diverse and fun, and just try to cover as many different things as we could. We consulted a lot of people that we know for the list. Hey, are we missing anything? What do you think about this? And overall, I think there were some, of course, there's always going to be some nitpicky discussions, and maybe some things that you wanted on weren't on, and that type of thing. But I think overall, the reaction of the people who've seen the list has been positive, and we really tried to cover as much as possible. I'm sure that there's always going to be some blind spots, but we tried. So
yeah, and that's the effort is put in, and that's the best part. Is claustrophobic is the best word to be put to the lexicon of finding wrestling now. It's like I try to throw on something, and it almost feels claustrophobic because it's like I don't know what to watch half the time, and without that curated voice, it's almost like you don't know who what's good, what's not. Trying to navigate all that, even though there's more than ever, it's trying to sort of see what is good, and everyone's taste is different too. There's more people online now, and I'm trying to do the greatest wrestler ever project, and it's sort of like when you're doing that project and you're trying to see who the greatest wrestler ever is, it's almost like it was probably easier in 2016 to do that than now.
Right. Yeah, just there's always so much, and it's just like all media, it's really easy to just be like overexposed to stuff. So just kind of trying to help that, and even just in talking to people so far about this, like it seems to be doing its job, where a lot of people are saying, hey, I'd never seen this, or I sent it to my friend who hasn't seen this, or whatever, and it's like, oh, this whole, like, Japanese wrestling on a whole is a blind spot, or this is a blind spot. So it's just, just kind of pointing people in the direction, and people are having fun with it and stuff too. So that's really all that we were hoping for.
Yeah, and let's delve right into 11 matches have been revealed for this, and the first one is Kenta Kobashi versus Kensuke Sasaki from Noah Destiny 05. And I think that's the perfect match to kick it off.
Yeah. So first, to go backwards, just to give a little bit of a format of the list. So we are doing, the whole thing is going to take I don't know, a year or so. Who exactly knows? It's going to be, we're just doing articles of 5 at a time that kind of have a theme to them. Some of the themes are more broad. Some are going to be more specific. It just kind of just depends, but just kind of a grouping of matches that you can kind of understand why they're grouped together. So the goal is every few weeks. We've done 3 articles so far, so 11 matches have been revealed. And so, yeah, we figured that it was, instead of just doing it all at once, and this was kind of Robin's idea, but instead of just doing it all at once, and instead of just saying, hey, here's the list, we're really, some of the articles are him and I writing them. Some of them are, we have guests from Voices of Wrestling, and some other just, wrestling fans that we know, or that we like their work or their writing, or we think that they would have a good idea. So we said, either we saw a match and thought of them immediately, or just gave them a list and said, hey, what matches here kind of personally hit you, personally affect you, and then go from there. So so we've released 11 matches so far.
Yes, and we're going to talk about some of these matches, not all of them, that struck me. The first one obviously struck me in the introduction article, Kenta Kobashi versus Kensuke Sasaki, of course, the 5-minute chop battle. And it's not even just the chop battle that strikes you. It's just, they're both Kensuke Sasaki and Kenta Kobashi's charisma sort of striking you in a different way than what wrestling sort of gives to you, and I feel having watching that match recently, it sort of puts you in awe of how hot a crowd can be, even in a large space.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you have these 2 kind of like behemoth, giant, like larger than life guys, right? That's kind of the point of that's what the whole match is. It's like these 2 just very like barrel chested men's man type of guys, and everybody talks about the chop battle, which is awesome, but the chop battle works because they're these 2 larger than life guys. Like if it was just anybody else doing the chop battle, it might be good, it might not be good, but it doesn't have the same weight as this does. So that's why it's so good. But in some ways, and I was just gonna say, in some ways, I think that the chop battle, like, the chop battle is awesome, and it's worth watching the match alone. But in some ways, the way that the chop battle has been, the reputation of it, and the way that people talk about it, is that sometimes it's easy to forget that the whole match, there's like way more to the match than just that, and they keep going back to it, and the whole thing is this big epic type of who can withstand the other, whatever. And like, it's, to me, it doesn't feel like it's quite on the, as far as like, people don't look at it the same way as some of the big All Japan matches, but even as a few of the other Noah matches, it might not be quite at like the Kobashi versus Misawa match, or even some of the other big Kobashi matches, the Akiyama match, and maybe some others. And to me, it's like right up there with all of them. I think that 5-star match, just within that very top tier of 2000s Puro stuff. So I think that in some ways, almost it's a little underrated, which feels a little silly, but yeah.
When you compare it to like Kobashi Misawa, when it sort of feels underrated, and that's the beauty of the All Japan and Noah styles, is like every match has its own identity, and
Right.
I love that about the styles, and I love how in further viewing you put the Kensuke Office versus Burning 8-man survival, which I felt was one of the greatest displays of like urgency in wrestling history. Oh
Yeah, that I hadn't watched that match in years, and then because of this, I was just kind of fiending and wanted to watch it, and I watched that a few weeks ago, and it still is awesome and is like incredible. So
yes, but not on this list, but still a match worth mentioning.
oh yeah, for sure. And again, like the list is just to show people as much stuff as possible. So I think that the recommended viewing part is like, because sometimes too you watch this stuff and maybe you have some extra time and you're still kind of feeding for more, and that's exactly like I was saying, the point is just like, all right, here's this, and then you'll see that match and then be like, okay, and then maybe you'll find that Kenta Shiozaki versus Nakajima and Sasaki match, and then just keep going from there.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. And you mentioned the Hell in a Cell match earlier. I'm floored at how crazy that match was. Like watching it for the first time, like a few years ago. I only watched that match for the first time like a few years ago in full. I've seen obviously the clip of Undertaker just throwing Mankind off the cell and choke slamming him down on the cell. But I actually sat down and watched the match in full a few years ago. And we're in the second article, which is Wrestling 101 Unique Spectacles now. And I feel like as much as Foley was the star of that show, Taker sort of being that enemy sort of gets underrated to a point as well.
Right. You always need the foil, right? You have to have that guy there so that the focus of the match is able to kind of be exemplified or showcased.
And that brawl is just so wild. It's just
right.
Foley just crawling and scratching for 20 odd minutes. And
right. So with that match for me, it's like, obviously there's the big moments of it. There's the first throw, which is just comes out of nowhere and is super early and is not even really set up too much. And then there's the second slam through the cage. And then there is the thumbtacks at the end. And, there might be one or two other main focuses, but really the match is just these main points and then just getting there from point A to point B to point C to whatever. But the thing that makes the match work, I think, is that in between some of that stuff, there's not that much, and a lot of the brawling is kind of like just standard, and it's not like super interesting as far as like a work perspective goes. But what makes it work for me is like just all the space and all of the time that the match has to breathe, that everything just kind of comes together and you kind of realize what's going on. And the fact that Mick Foley just keeps getting up within that space to breathe and just never quits and never goes away. I think that that's what really makes it work, where sure, it's these big moments and there's not that much connective tissue as far as like the brawling or the wrestling goes, but the connective tissue is in just the emotion and the idea of like, can this guy get up? Like they do a good job of making you understand that this is like an actual person. It's kind of, if you really kind of pick it apart in like a real meta way, like they do a good job of showing you that this is not just a wrestler, but it's an actual person. And it kind of finds the balance there of like, hey, this part isn't just the show. and not in like a weird work shoot way, but just in like this is a human being who is like, he's never going to be the same after this. And I think that that's really what makes it all work. And when I was 10 or 11 watching it, like just with my jaw dropped, like, oh my God, this guy keeps going. And then from there, Mick Foley was my favorite wrestler. He was my favorite of all the Attitude Era guys when I was watching in real time. Like, I liked them all, and I thought The Rock was awesome, and I thought that Stone Cold was awesome, and like I was like definitely fans, like beyond just like, oh, that guy's cool. Like, I liked them all, but Mick Foley was always my number one guy behind him more than the others. And I think that this match being like my first real exposure to that was why.
Yeah, I love Foley, and he's just the essence of perseverance in the Attitude Era, and that main character that just sort of nicks at that sort of
Black Friday deals. The gifts are unreal.
Shop JCPenney for thousands of deals solo, no coupons needed. This weekend, save up to 50% on kitchen electrics from brands like Keurig and Cuisinart. Say yes, please, to diamonds and gemstones, now $19.99 each. And bundle up the fam in coats, starting at $14.99. We got your holiday.
Black Friday deals. Shop, JCPenney.
Offers valid on select items 11/18 through 11/20. Excluded from coupons. Exclusions apply. See store or jcp.com for details.
When you drive the brand ranked #1 in dependability by J.D. Power, you can stop thinking about what you can't do and start doing what you never thought possible. Visit your local Kia dealer today to see yourself behind the wheel of the brand ranked #1 in dependability by J.D. Power. Kia, movement that inspires.
Call 800-333-4KIA for details. Always drive safely. Kia received the fewest reported problems among all brands in the J.D. Power 2022 U.S. Vehicle Dependability Study based on 2019 models. See jdpower.com/awards for 2022 details.
Sure, we have 30 seconds to tell you that drivers who switch to Progressive could save big. But then what? Well, there is a nice piece of stock music playing behind me that a talented composer worked really hard on. So let's enjoy it. Wow, almost overshadows the saving big when you switch to Progressive part. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
essence of perseverance. So, and also the essence of not having the best matches on here. Fire Road.
Oh yeah, this was one that this was kind of a novelty pick of like, hey, we have all these other matches, and then you figure out one or two things that's like not as good, but you just want to shoehorn on there because it's just fun and you think that people should see it. And Fire Road is like that match for me. It's funny. I used to do a podcast called Burning Spirits, and one time we had kind of just a potpourri episode, I think, where we were just watching random things, and this was one of them. We talked about it, and somebody said like, yeah, as soon as somebody, just a listener said, as soon as I saw that you were doing this, I knew that Fire Road would be on it. And I found that pretty funny and awesome that it was that much of a tell that just me being involved would mean that this match would be on there. I think that I'm doing my job right. We've done the Voice of Wrestling Secret Santa thing before, and I've definitely thrown this match to somebody there too. So it's just it's a match that's outside. It looks like an apartment complex or a business complex or something. It's just kind of right in the middle. And
sketchy, all right.
Yeah, it feels sketchy and weird, and there's just fire and there's trucks in the full version of this match. You can see I think that it's Jun Kasai drives the truck that they jump off of. He's the one that drives it up, and like the reason why there's no boards or anything in the there's no like mat on the ring. It's just boards, and it's because they come out and the CZW guys all take it up. There's a full version out there, but I don't think it's on the internet, which is a bummer. But I have it on DVD somewhere. But yeah, just like weird and chaotic. They set the ring on fire. There's big bumps. There's a car. Zandig drags Matsunaga with a car and power bombs him off of it, and it's just like really sketchy and crazy. And it's a type of match where just like it feels like I was going to say that it feels like something could go wrong at any second, but really when you're watching it, it's not something could go wrong at any second. It's like something is going
Really?
wrong. Like just watching it is wrong. Like the fact that it exists is wrong. And that's what makes it so cool and crazy. Like we talk about spectacles of a match on fire surrounded by just what feels just like random people in the middle of an apartment complex. Feels really guerrilla and crazy, and it's like it's just awesome. It's one of those matches where like it doesn't no one can say if it's a good match or a bad match, and it doesn't matter. Like I don't want to judge this match at all with stars or whether it's good or bad or this guy should have done this instead of that. Like it's none of that at all. It's just complete chaos and anarchy and craziness, and it's just a lot of fun. So like we were saying, I think that it's important for lists like this to kind of just be diverse and try to cover a lot of different lanes. And I think that this is one of that's just like it can't be really replicated. So I think that just everybody should see it, even if it's too much for you. You should see at least once.
Yeah, that fire. Also, that Onita fire match with Sabu and Sheik.
Yeah,
that's wild. That is wild.
That one's very crazy. I mean, that one is just much more. Oh, this match
Fire.
is 2 minutes long because they put fire in it, and the fire got so crazy that they just couldn't go on.
Yeah. You know what my favorite Big Japan match of that like 95 to 2000 era is? That grocery store death match.
Oh yeah, that one is good too. I haven't seen that. We covered that on Burning Spirits at 1.2. Yeah, that one is very fun too.
That one is hilarious. I'm just laughing. I'm like, Stone Cold and Booker T, eat your heart out because these Big Japan guys, including a young Abby Kobayashi.
Yep.
Because Big Japan was fun. And also, I want to shout out, even though it's not in the recommended viewing, those campground death matches that DDT used to do.
Oh yeah. Those are good too.
Yeah, but those are examples of matches that you that are not good, but that don't have to be very good to be on this. But speaking of matches that are very good that are on this these days, and
Yes,
I watched this very recently. It's just very colorful, just the characters, and what struck me the most is not how crisp the work was, but how urgent the work was.
Right. Yeah, I think honestly, I think that you can kind of group this and the Toriumon match together because they're different, but they're kind of different, similar. Where that's the Toriumon match is 8/30, 2003.
Yeah,
but with both of them, I think like to me one of the most. I mean, I say that I feel like if I'm gonna watch just a random match that is just like fun or just kind of like soul food type of wrestling, I feel like if I was gonna say what my favorite type of match like this is, it's gonna be this big time kind of multi-man showcase match. Like Shikara did them a lot with King of Trios, not quite as many people as this, but like King of Trios and the Cyberneticos that they would do, and you know when you see these big time matches, it's really I find them the way that they get structured very fun, where you kind of go through and they do these matchups with guys kind of matching up with each other, and they each kind of can show off. They run through some of their signature stuff or kind of set the groundwork for what the match is, and then it just escalates and gets crisper, and then the pace picks up, and especially in the Toriumon match, it just gets very crazy, very fast. And in the these days match too, where the Kantai is kind of heelish and all that stuff, and it's crisp. And I just find this style of match to be really fun and engaging, where you could just kind of turn your brain off and just watch all of this stuff together. And that's why I think that these types of matches are so great, and to be honest, a part of me was wondering if like the Michinoku Pro and the Torium match were like too similar, if we were like not expanding enough with them. But then I've watched them both recently. I'm just like, no, these are both awesome and should be on there. And I watched the other the after these days they had another match in December from Akuta Star Lanes, and I watched that the other day too. And I don't know which one I like better, but a lot of people think that like the these days match is kind of the one to watch because it's the famous one and it's at
Sumo Hall.
Sumo Hall, yeah.
Sumo.
It's at one.
It's at Sumo. Yeah, it's at Sumo. Yeah.
So it's bigger, obviously, but then but the Kuta Star Lanes one might be even better. So yeah, like I said, I think that I the these days match is awesome. It's a match honestly that I haven't seen as much. I've seen it a few times throughout my life, but I haven't watched it as much as some of these other matches. But it's still like the Michinoku Pro multi-man style is really like kind of, you still see it today. Like you see it in the Dragon Gate stuff. You see it in a lot of the way that the U.S. Indies over the past 20 years have kind of structured their matches. We mentioned Shikara, but that style of match is still like
right
prominent. You know, in the Indies, you see it when AEW does matches like this, and when you see guys like the Elite do matches like this. Like it all comes back to the these days match and just the Michinoku Pro style. You see it like every time you see like Elite and the Young Bucks team up, or Omega and the Young Bucks team up, like you see evidence of like this match in those matches. So yeah, I think that the style is awesome and very fun, but it's also one of the more influential styles as far as what, if you turn on TV or you open up, you know, whatever IWTV or whatever, and you just watch random matches, like you're going to see this more often than you may see some other things.
Yeah, this is one of the most influential styles of the last 30 years, in my opinion. And it shows how wrestling has evolved past the ground stages. You know, and I love these days. It's one of the most influential matches ever, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the last match I wanted to touch on was the Royal Rumble 1992, and you're floored. When I read somebody your description of the Royal Rumble 1992 on Friday, and they were just floored at like how Heenan was really the star of the show, even though Flair was a great participant. And they said that convinced them, and it was such a marvel. It's just such a marvel to see how Heenan was the star of that show.
Yeah, for me, this match is great because it kind of it showcases a lot of different things all at once. It showcases, you know, from a bubble, the Royal Rumbles are fun because they showcase the roster of the company in a snapshot. It shows Ric Flair kind of, he's not, the thing with how Flair is so good in this match is that he's not spectacular in it. It's not like his best performance as far as you're really behind Ric Flair or anything, but, and you know, like he's not really the focus of a lot of the match, but he's just there consistently. Whenever you need him, he's there, and he's in for 53 minutes or whatever it is, and he's just always there, just bumming for everybody, making everyone look good, and he's just very. It's funny where he wins, but he's also just the glue of the match as far as everybody in the match. But then it kind of showcases how important just the whole production of wrestling is, and how these people that are not in the match and are not important to the match from the like what's happening in the ring standpoint can really paint the picture of how a match is perceived and remembered and what the point of it is. And Heenan's performance here, getting everybody behind. Well, no, sorry, not getting people behind Flair. Kind of doing the opposite of he's so behind Flair that you want to see Flair desperately lose. The way that Heenan is so good at getting Flair over by being so annoying about it, but also doing it in a way that makes everybody else look good. Like you want whoever Heenan is talking about, you want that guy to beat Flair, and it does. And he's so clever and funny, but then it's just like so. Just it's the perfect package as far as how WWF wrestling is presented and all these pieces coming together. And like, and a little bit of a sigh, like I even wonder if he just was going out there and he was even like meant to be as good as it is, or was even like understanding how good he was during it, or if it was just kind of like, yeah, I'm just doing my job, whatever. It's just kind of interesting to think of things from that perspective. But yeah, like I think that it's one of the single greatest one night stories and performances of in WWF history, WWE history. I think that it's just one of those really iconic, like it's an easy match to kind of just like pull back the curtains a little bit and see how all these little intangible things all kind of work together to create this total package afterwards.
And also, I think it showcased the then of the company at that point, the now of the company, and the future of the company, with Shawn Michaels, Undertaker being in it, and like how the company was going to be shaped for years to come.
Yep.
As well.
Yeah.
So it's an incredible match looking forward as well as backward.
Yeah, for sure. It's and I think. I mean, I think that a lot of people realize, but I think it's absolutely easily the best Royal Rumble of all time.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really easy. Like I sometimes I just think about like very casually what my top 5 favorite WWE matches are, because it's kind of easy to think about it. And I realized recently that I think that that's actually probably one of them too. So it's like it's not just as good on a Royal Rumble scale, but it's good as far as the top things that the company has ever presented. Total.
I wholesomely agree with you there. It's flooring, like it's what that company can do at its best. And it floors you when wrestling can move you in such great ways.
Yep, for sure.
What do we have coming up next for Wrestling 101?
We've actually been discussing, I don't know which exactly article that is going to be next, to be honest. We've thrown out some ideas, thinking possibly like kind of going to one of the groupings that focuses on singles matches, maybe from the 80s, but don't know for sure, to just kind of switch things up, but that easily might change. So I don't know what is next there, but we're
keep
just kind of keep up on the Discord, keep up on Voices of Wrestling. We're just kind of compiling these things anyway, and then just kind of when we figure out what the next one is, then kind of focusing on that. But we're just kind of compiling a lot of them to have anyway, so that we can kind of just go in different directions. So but yeah, I don't know exactly what's next, but the whole list is done. There has been 1 or 2 things that we switched out recently. It's kind of always fluid of maybe somebody brings up something, and in most times when people bring up stuff, it's kind of like we probably thought of that, but there has been 1 or 2 things where it's like, oh, okay, that actually is a interesting idea. So yeah, I don't know exactly when. I think would hope sometime in December to have another one out. But I don't, with the holidays and everything, and life gets in the way and work and stuff.
Yeah.
It's hard to say exactly when these things will come out, but
The truth.
you're right. But like I said, the list is done, and we wanted to get that. It took kind of months of discussion and this or that and that type of thing to figure out the list, but we wanted to have that all done before we even started releasing it. So, but yeah, just the one last thing about not one last thing, but just with the greater list, just kind of showcase some things about it. I think that it has 23 different promotions. So 23 different promotions. We didn't mention this in the beginning, but it's from 1980 on. So we wanted it to be a good history of pro wrestling, but we didn't want it to be too big of a time frame, and we just kind of considered 1980 as the cutoff of modern pro wrestling is after this date.
Right.
It wasn't too much of like to say that the 70s or anything before wasn't pro wrestling or anything like that. It was just a good, simple, hey, this is what we kind of consider, what we're considering modern, and this is the pool that we want to pull from. So combination of not necessarily knowing as much from before that, and also just not wanting it to be too wide of a net, just 1980 on. But then from there, I think it's something like, so in the from the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s, they're all pretty even, but there's a little bit more in the 90s. But we tried to kind of
even it out.
Even out. So it's a little bit more in the 90s, but overall about 20 to 25 matches from each of those 4 decades, and then a little bit more in the 90s. So to try to just give a bit of a to make things a bit diverse.
Any plugs other than the Wrestling 101?
Not really, no. That's really all. I've written a little bit more for Voices of Wrestling over the past little while, but really this is my major focus as far as writing projects go. And other than that, I'm not really doing any other wrestling stuff of note or anything. So just check this out. I don't even think it's on Voice of Wrestling, which we've mentioned, but it also has its own website with everything consolidated there. So the website is thewrestling101.com. So like we've been saying, every few weeks for an article, but just keep checking it out. My Twitter is Stan__Hansen. So if Twitter is still a thing, you can follow me on there. And if it's not, I don't know. But Voice of Wrestling is on Twitter too. And I think they're on Instagram and whatever else.
Instagram now, it's a marvel.
Yep. And then on the Voice of Wrestling Discord, there's a Wrestling 101 channel on there, and it's been really fun. I really that channel has been pretty active, and I've been enjoying a lot. So if you watch any of these matches or just have any general discussions about the project, or you see one thing that the project made you go, oh, I found this guy, and it was really interesting, and then I found this other match too. I love all that, and that's exactly what the purpose of this project is. So pop into there, the Voice of Wrestling Discord, the Wrestling 101 channel, and just talk to us in there. And both Robin and I have been pretty active in there, just discussing all this stuff. And this is the type of stuff that I really have fun discussing. I think that with wrestling discourse and discussion, it's really over the past like 6 months or a year, I've just found it really draining with a lot of the current AEW discussion to just be really difficult, and people just get lost in the weeds, and it's not really fun. And I think that when you kind of just reset and you can just talk about this type of wrestling and matches that are just kind of universally discussed and praised, which that's not to say you should like every match on here. I don't, if you don't like a match, that's great. Just discuss why, But I think that it's really fun where you can take things like, ratings and politics and all this stuff and just not focus on it here, where you could just kind of just watch wrestling, and that's awesome, and just discuss why it's awesome or why you don't think it's awesome, why this thing is better than that thing. I think that that's really fun and, positive discourse, and it's not all this murky stuff that's going on right now. So that's really just all that I want and hope for. So if you want to just discuss this, if you watch that Toriuman match, and it was like somebody the other day was watching that match, and the match kind of starts with how a lot of these matches start with kind of comedy stuff, and it's a little slower as a showcase. And somebody popped in there and they were like, "Hey, is this like just a good comedy match? Like, this is fun, don't get me wrong, but like, I don't know about it being on this list. It just kind of is, I don't know, it's just a comedy match." And then they popped in a few minutes later and they're just like, "Okay, disregard everything that I just said. I just finished watching the match and it was unbelievable. Like, now I get it, and I spoke way too early, and this is awesome." And that's all that type of discussion, and just people discovering stuff and having opinions and watching and having fun. That's all that I want from this. So pop in there, discuss, and there's already been people like Aaron Taub from the former Everything Evolves podcast on his Twitter. He has started reviewing every one of the matches that we've covered, and he has his own interesting points and things that he picked up from them. Like, he really loved the way that the wrestling was presented as this kind of weird movie type of thing in the Funk versus Onita Exploding Ring match, and he didn't like he didn't really find there was that much else in between the big spots in the Hell in a Cell match, and just all these different little things that somebody will watch and pick up different stuff on them. I think that that's really what's fun about wrestling, and what's just cool to discuss. So pop in there, message me, talk about the stuff, whatever. I that's really what I want to encourage with this.
And that's why I reached out to you today. Thank you, Kevin, for joining me today. Follow Social Suplex at Social Suplex. DJ D Kooks, if Twitter still exists. Hopefully, it's probably going to go down in the next couple of days. Hopefully not, but follow me on Voices of Wrestling Discord or on Social Suplex Discord. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Thank you for joining Meet the Press Slam. That for Danny Kukler and Kevin Hare. Thank you for joining.
Black Friday deals. The gifts are unreal.
Shop JCPenney for thousands of deals solo, no coupons needed. This weekend, save up to 50% on kitchen electrics from brands like Keurig and Cuisinart. Say yes, please, to diamonds and gemstones, now $19.99 each. And bundle up the fam in coats, starting at $14.99. We got your holiday.
Black Friday deals. Shop, JCPenney.
Offers valid on select items 11/18 through 11/20. Excluded from coupons. Exclusions apply. See store or jcp.com for details.
Sure, we have 30 seconds to tell you that drivers who switch to Progressive could save big. But then what? Well, there is a nice piece of stock music playing behind me that a talented composer worked really hard on. So let's enjoy it. Wow, almost overshadows the saving big when you switch to Progressive part. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.